An author on Threads asked about how women in the 19th century maneuvered through trains in large bustle dresses. So it gave me the idea to talk about that. I'm not a costume professional. I'm not a costume historian, but as an author of historical romance set in the late 19th century, I really like this topic, and I research it a lot, so I have an answer for you. First of all, the 19th century isn't one single set of years. Some researchers go so far as to say it began at the end of the French Revolution, and some begin it in 1799. It didn't end until 1901 when Victoria died. But within those years, you have the end of the French Revolution, the Georgian era, the Regency era, which only lasted 9 years, and then you have Victoria after the Georgian era. She reigned from 1837 to 1901, and it was the longest portion of the 19th century. As it is wont to do, fashion will change. It went from the empire waists of the Regency Jane Austen era, but if you're picturing something like this large skirted gown, you're in roughly the 1860s to the 1870s. This one here is a Worth that was created in 1885. It has the bustle that we spoke of, but note that the skirt is shorter in front. Now this next one might be what you're picturing when you're thinking of a woman wearing a bustle gown on a train, but it was made for an empress to wear to a ball. More than likely, she probably only wore it once, and I seriously doubt she got onto a train with it. So she wouldn't be trying to squeeze herself through a narrow train aisle. Hi, Editing Julia here. I was actually looking at that museum article again, and I'm a little bit confused now as to who actually wore the dress. I'll put the names that I found here. So it was either an Empress Eugenia, or it was, I'll insert the woman's name here. Sorry for the confusion. Back to the video. These dresses that you see here are from 1894, smack in the middle of the era of steam trains. See how the silhouette of the skirt is even narrower than the ones I showed you previously. These I don't think would have any problem moving through a narrow train aisle. And then these fine ladies are from 1899, and look at the silhouette of those skirts. Those are as close to modern skirts as you're going to get. No bustle in sight. Would you have problems walking down a train aisle in something like this? Sorry to wax poetic about this topic, but I had to research this for my Victorian era train romance called Courting the Station Master's Daughter. Dresses that you're thinking of, like Empress Eugenia's dress, would probably never be worn on a train. It was more than likely that it was packed into her trunks, waiting for her to arrive at her destination before it got taken out. Because you got to remember the logistics of train travel back then. These trains ran on coal, which spewed out great big clouds of black soot. That black soot is being pushed by the wind back towards the passenger cars. And those trains weren't like the bullet trains of today, where we're basically sealed into the compartments. The windows were drafty, and if air could come in, then the soot could come in, and the soot would get all over your clothes. So most people that were traveling that were accustomed to traveling on trains would wear clothes that could get all sooty before they arrived. If she was going to a ball, more than likely it would be somewhere in London that's close by. And to get to her destination, she wouldn't be using a train anyway. She would be getting into a carriage. Trains inside London had hours of operation, whereas a partygoer in the late 1880s and 1890s were used to the balls starting at 10 and not getting over until 3 in the morning. But the trains usually stopped running about midnight. So if you were going to a party, you could likely take a train there. But more than likely, you would have to stay over with your host. If that's what they wanted, then that's fine. But if it wasn't part of the itinerary for the ball, then you would have to come and go in your own carriage. And carriages for hundreds of years before the inception of trains were the preferred mode of transportation. So every girl in London knew how to pick up her enormous skirts and shove them into the carriage. Don't you think? There were also other prevalent pressures on women to avoid trains as much as they could in the 19th century. There was one very prominent doctor who wrote an article that said that, I'm paraphrasing, but I'll show you here, that women shouldn't ride trains because their uteruses would fly out because of the high speeds. Ridiculous now that we look back on it, but it's true. Here's the article. And it has been, if you've looked into this subject at all, you've heard this referenced time and time again. But there were also other concerns. Some people said that there was something called carbonic acid that the trains exuded, and you didn't want to breathe that. They also said that young women shouldn't ride trains because their insides would shift around and it would mess up their menses. And the last reason you wouldn't be likely to see a dress like Empress Eugenia's on a train is that, imagine you're the girl wearing that dress and arriving at your hostess's door. You're a highborn society lady visiting other highborn society ladies. If they saw you smelling of sulfur and covered in soot, you would be laughed out of your societal circle. So most of the time, if a woman was going to a ball in a gown like that, she wouldn't be taking a train. So would it be hard for a woman to navigate train aisles in dresses like that? For the one from 1875 and 1860, probably. But for the ones from the 1880s, the girls could make it work because it was their normal life, and they probably took trains at least periodically. From 1880 on, she would probably be wearing a travel suit like that one. So what do you think? Do you think you could navigate a train aisle in one of these dresses? Would you ever like to give it a try? Which style of dress do you like best? While you're at it, don't forget to check out my novel, Courting the Station Master's Daughter. Thanks for watching. And here's another video you might enjoy.